Hello everybody and welcome back. Today we are doing another Deep Rock Galactic tier list. This is looking at the G2 Overclocks. This is the assault rifle for Scout. I have recently got all of these and got to try them all out, and I'm going to be giving my opinions on each of these. So let's get started. We're going to start out with the balanced overclocks and end on the unstable overclocks. As you can kind of see, the G2 actually has a pretty good selection of overclocks. So our first overclock is compact ammo. Compact ammo gives you recoil reduction as well as 5 additional ammo in your magazine. This is all around a pretty good option. The assault rifle feels like it does need extra ammo, and I usually take extra ammo for the magazine. It could use more extra ammo out of it, but usually I take it with extra ammo in the magazine, and that works out just fine. Having recoil reduction is pretty good, although I've noticed that the G2 already doesn't have very much recoil reduction. Having that, I don't feel that much of a difference, but it's always useful, so I think I'm going to put compact ammo into B tier. It's all around a decent overclock. Like a lot of clean overclocks, they're usually decent, but nothing fantastic. Our next clean overclock is Gauss rerouting. Gauss rerouting gives you 1 additional rate of fire and knocks 0.3 seconds off of your reload time. The G2 already reloads really fast, so the reload speed I didn't notice all that much. It felt a little bit nicer when I was using it, and the rate of fire did feel nice. Going full rate of fire with the G2 is actually a pretty good option. As I said, it doesn't have very much recoil. It also doesn't have very much spread, so it works out pretty well just going with full rate of fire. I think I like this one more than compact ammo, and I would probably put gas rerouting up into A tier, just because building rate of fire with the G2 is actually not a bad choice for a weapon that is already highly accurate and has very little recoil. Our last clean overclock for the G2 is the homebrew powder, and this randomizes your damage between doing 80% of your damage that it says or doing 140% of the damage that it shows. So you can low roll or high roll or go somewhere in between. Now with homebrew powder, I usually like this one. I liked it a lot on the gunner's revolver. On the G2, I really do not like the homebrew powder. It messes with your breakpoints a little bit too much, I think, because the G2 already hits nice breakpoints. Having a base of 15 damage is pretty nice for hitting a lot of breakpoints, and randomizing that kind of messes with what I'm used to. If I go full damage with it, it's a little bit more consistent, at least for smaller enemies like swarmers. The higher damage I don't notice all that often triggering to where it will kill something with 1 less bullet than I normally would. I know it will if you add up enough to things like Praetorians or something like that, but overall, I do not like the inconsistency that homebrew powder gives the G2. If you're going with full damage, it's okay. If you're not, then it's pretty bad in my opinion. I would put the homebrew powder in C tier if you're going with damage. If you're not going with damage, I would say it's D tier, but I'll put it in C tier for right now. And let's move on to the balanced overclocks. So our first one is overclocked firing mechanism. This gives you 3 more rate of fire, but gives you twice the amount of recoil. Now I did take this with recoil reduction, and then you notice absolutely no difference except for the extremely high rate of fire, but that's on the same line as one of your rate of fire increases for the G2. And I took it off, and I didn't notice the recoil being all that bad. Even doubling the recoil, I was still able to hit shots at a pretty long distance without any trouble. And going full rate of fire actually gave you a lot of damage towards large enemies like Praetorians. I actually really enjoy this firing mechanism. Like I said, you can go with the recoil reduction and then it's nothing but a plus. Or you could just embrace the recoil and go with even more rate of fire and have it even more DPS with the gun. I would put this one also high up into A tier. I rather like this on the G2. Our next balanced overclock is Bullets of Mercy. This makes it so we do 33% increased damage towards any enemy that is affected by status. So this is fire, stun, electrocution, frozen, or acid, at the cost of getting 5 less shots in our gun. So we get 5 less shots in the magazine, but we do 33% more damage if the target is under any sort of status effect. This one I find to be really strong because almost every team is going to be running some sort of status effect. If you have a driller on the team, you have a status effect. If you have an engineer, they're probably running some sort of status effect. You yourself as a scout could be running some sort of status effect. If you're playing solo, you can have Bosco be running status effects as well, whether that be freezing or electrocuting. So there's almost always going to be some sort of status effect that's going on, whether that be through grenades, whether that be through other people's weapons, whether that be through Bosco's weapons. You're pretty much always going to get bonus damage so long as you target those enemies, and losing 5 more shots in your magazine doesn't make a huge difference if you're going with the modification to get a larger magazine, which is what I usually go with. I would put Bullets of Mercy probably up into S tier because it really does feel like it's just a bonus on pretty much everything that you're fighting most of the time. Very few missions I've taken this where I have been kind of disappointed that either nobody's running status effects or nobody's running that many status effects, or where I couldn't trigger status effects myself. I mean, I'm usually running like the IFG grenade or the cryo grenade, so I can usually trigger it myself against larger enemies at the very least. Next is AI stabilization engine. This one is probably my favorite overclock for the gun, even though I'd say Bullets of Mercy might be the best one for the G2. The AI stabilization is just so much fun to use because it makes it so you have 0 recoil with the gun, you have 9 times recovery spread, which pretty much means your bullets are hitting exactly where you're pointing, and you get 40% more damage to weak spots. The downside is you get 2 less rate of fire and 2 less damage. Then you can make this up with modifications that go with more damage and faster rate of fire, which is exactly what I do. You could just not do that and still just be trying to hit weak points. This turns your G2 essentially into a laser beam, and it is so much fun to use at really any range. You can pick off menaces from all the way across the map, regardless of even how big the map is. As long as you can see it, you can hit it, and I really find this one fun. Is it one of the best ones? I would say it's still pretty strong, but I'm not sure if it's as good as Bullets of Mercy. I'm still going to put it into S tier because I do think it gives you quite a bit of advantage with the G2, especially if you're already accurate. This just makes it so that all of your hits are way more consistent. And then our last overclock is electrifying reload. This makes it so we get embedded detonators more or less on our assault rifle that will then electrocute enemies at the cost of losing 2 damage and losing 5 magazine size. Now, like I said, magazine size you can make up for with the modification, and damage you can make up with modifications as well. Overall, though, I really don't care for electrifying reload all that much. Electrifying enemies can be useful. It slows them down, it deals damage over time, and it makes them more susceptible to damage, so that's always a good thing. But losing out on your damage and your magazine really makes this weapon feel like it's supposed to be a supportive weapon then. And that's not always what you want with Scout. You can be supportive for the team, but it makes it so if you're wandering out solo, it doesn't feel as strong against like random hordes that might show up. I usually run this one with the Zukov submachine guns and use them mostly as my primary weapon if I'm taking electrifying reload, and then use this as more of a supportive weapon for the team. I really don't like this overclock for solo missions at all. I find it really hindering for me. So I'm going to put electrifying reload somewhere into C tier. I like it more than homebrew powder because at least it's consistent. Homebrew powder just throws off everything for me. So I think I'm going to put it kind of low though. I wouldn't say any of Scouts belong in D tier except for, like I said, homebrew powder if you're going with no extra damage, because relying on homebrew powder to high roll for you is just not a good strategy, I found. But everything else does have some redeeming qualities to it. Some of these are just pretty solid overall. So this is where I'd put all of the overclocks for the G2. Hopefully you guys found this useful, found this entertaining, found this informative. If you guys did and you're new here, be sure that you get subscribed. That way you get notifications whenever I post any of these videos. Thank you guys also very much for watching this video. I really do appreciate it, and I will talk to all of you guys next time. Till then, stay cool, and bye.